Okay, hello and welcome to everybody. We'll go through introductions of the business reps and folks who are on the call from the e-board. This meeting is being recorded and we will continuously post the agenda in chat so everybody's familiar. Happy holidays, hello and welcome again. My name is Zeb Feldman, SEMA OE3 business rep. Adam?
Hey, this is Adam Cole, one of your SEMA OE3 business reps.
And Mary Beth, I see you as the sole representative from the e-board right now, I think.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Mary Beth Rogers. I work at DFCS. If you're not a DFCS person and I'm not familiar with me.
And you are, as of the first of the year, will be officially a voting member of the e-board.
Yeah, right.
And Mary Beth's been attending for a while now. And actually, JP, is that Jim Piazza or is that a different JP? If it's Jim Piazza, feel free to introduce yourself, please. And I see Robin Rivas just joined us. If you want to say hello, Robin, as a fellow e-board member.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Happy holidays. It's Robin Rivas, a member at large for SEMA.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to everybody. As I said, I'm going to keep posting the agenda in chat so folks can see. And do feel free to ask questions. Because we have fewer than 50 people, anyone is free to speak or type questions at any time. And so you all also have the flexibility to unmute yourselves. So please feel free to do that and take advantage. We're going to be talking today about the VSIP, or Voluntary Separation Incentive Program, update and impact, the COVID-19 restrictions, the county budget news, what's been coming out of this. Some of that will be covered in the VSIP because that has a budgetary impact. Adam's got some great information for us about the classification committee, as well as the vaccine rollout. I'm sure about the other issues as well. So first off, the VSIP, or Voluntary Separation Incentive Program. Adam, how's this? I'll start off on this one and then chime in with anything I miss.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so the Voluntary Separation Incentive Program, as you know, was offered to not all, but many county employees in unions that really would be able to take advantage of it. The terms were slightly different, but the economics were identical as far as I can tell amongst the different bargaining unions and units. And we made this offer to SEMA individuals. Precisely 141 SEMA people were approved for the VSIP, or Voluntary Separation Incentive Program. 100 of which were SEMA members, 41 of which were not SEMA members. So it is going to be a significant hit to our membership, but we will redouble our efforts to recruit new members, especially in the new year. The estimated savings, Adam, could you refresh my memory on that? It was like 110 million. Does that sound about right?
No, we estimated it at about 94 million, but we heard from the county executive that OBA is putting it right at 100 million in savings. That's assuming that every position is actually deleted. And we know that some likely won't be, some small number won't be, but I think the real savings to be a little bit less than 100 million.
And it's still a significant chunk for those who been keeping score at home. We know that the general impact to the county budget that they're looking to bridge is somewhere north of 300 million, maybe 340 million. So coming in with approximately 100 million in voluntary savings is certainly a big help. I do have some information, and I'm sure Adam will have more about the VSIP. So we're now starting to feel, as people have announced their retirement, we're starting to feel that pinch where different personalities and perhaps more importantly, specific positions are known that they will leave. So how do you rejigger the assignments to accommodate those? Will some of those positions be rehired? As Adam points out, there's a couple, like probably literally a few maybe, that will be rehired immediately because they just can't accommodate it. Also, the departments, and this is important to know, departments have the flexibility to say, oh, we're losing this critical management analyst position, well, we'll swap out an office specialist 3 for it. So that you do have that flexibility, even though everybody recognizes an office specialist 3 doesn't make the same as a management analyst. The inverse could be true, right? You could delete a more senior vacant position to keep a more junior one that you need to rehire. So there is that flexibility in the department. Some executives apparently don't know about that. So be sure, for those of you that are maybe in your area, you know you need to replace a particular person, be sure to look at that and have those conversations with your executives.
And that deadline for submission, if you want to do I think we're kind of calling it a prisoner or a hostage exchange, right? We'll release this visit position if you give us something else in exchange. We being OBA or the county executive in that context. But the deadline for that is January 6th. So if that's not something that your higher ups are on top of, and there's something in your area, a position that you've lost underneath you, maybe that you think needs to be a priority, that's something that you should get on sooner rather than later, because that deadline for exchanges is going to come up rather soon, especially with the holidays in between now and then. You're on mute,
that's absolutely true. Other components of the knowledge now that individuals will be leaving. We just settled, I don't know if anyone's on the call, I'm kind of scanning the list here. We just settled a reorg in behavioral health. Some key personalities took advantage of VISIP that now may impact that reorg. So I'm working, just this morning, I've been working with the department to try to put the brakes on some of those changes that they're kind of, I think, maybe hastily making. So if that's happening in your areas, let me know, let Adam know, because we sure want to make sure that the changes are deliberate and that they take into account the fact that you can have swap positions or do a prisoner exchange, as Adam pointed out. Also, I did want to point out that there were 2 SEMA individuals who had their VISIP denied. However, the VISIP that was denied, it was denied because they were ineligible. So if we go back and actually look at the agreement, for example, you have to be a full-time employee, not on your first probationary period. So if you were extra help, one person was extra help, one person did not have, had not completed probation, you're just not eligible for it. Nobody has been denied voluntarily. And what I mean by that is the county didn't say, you know what, I really need that program manager. I'm just denying you, Adam, your ability to apply because I've decided I really need your position. So that was a surprise to me. I don't know if that was a surprise to you, Adam, or Mary Beth, or Robin, or anyone else involved in the negotiations. That was a surprise to me that everyone who put in was allowed.
Yeah, I think it was, I would say, not just a surprise to us, but a surprise to ESA as well. I think as Zeb mentioned, you know, it was technically in violation of the agreement that we reached that some of those positions were approved, right? There was language in the VISIP agreement that said classifications that are one-off won't be approved, right? And some of those classifications were approved.
Right.
So it was definitely a surprise to us. And I think kind of the reason we would identify that is that looking through the VISIP approval list, a vast majority of individuals who were approved are not waiting until the last possible day, March 4th or March 7th, to separate. They're separating much sooner. And as folks will recall, the way the county's funding the VISIP payments is that every individual, you know, classification already has the salary for the whole year budgeted for it, right? And related expenses, which extends to the end of the fiscal year at the end of June. So if someone's to leave in March, the VISIP payment in effect is just all the salary you would have gotten for the rest of the year rolled up and handed to you in March. That being said, you don't get a larger payment if you leave sooner. So for anyone who's leaving in December, the county's coming out ahead somewhat substantially in that equation. In addition, converting that position down to likely someone at a lower step, et cetera. So there's some substantial savings there. I think the county and OEA are recognizing that VISIP's a fair deal for them this year, in addition to ongoing.
Yep, absolutely. Well, did you have more to add on the VISIP? Okay, well, I'll please feel free to post questions or ask about that. So, an additional item I wanted to highlight about VISIP is we were getting requests on both ends. On the one hand, it was please immediately share the results of VISIP as soon as the union has it. On the other end, we did get a couple of concerns because we shared a redacted list. But if you wanted to look at it and say, oh, there's only one, director of care in behavioral health, and I see that they're in the Department of Behavioral Health and the director of care put in, you could figure out who it was. And that caused some concern to people because SEMA members, because they were not able to, whatever, give the correct notification to their colleagues or friends in the workplace and say, hey, by the way, I've put in, I'm going to be leaving. So there was some concern about that.
But very few concerns.
Very few. Oh yeah. We probably had 100+ emails of people saying, thanks for sharing. This is a great program. I participated. I'm a long-term SEMA member, or I'm even ones where it's like, I'm not participating, but I appreciate that this is out there and recognizing that it helps everybody. No, thank you for that, Robin. Also, there were some questions that we've been getting is in the future, will the county offer an additional VISIP, or will they offer an additional buyout of some kind, whether it's a grant of service time or air time, or if it's some other incentive in the future? Unknown, but I would say unlikely. The reason I say unlikely is we have a weird space of time right now where the county still has money to spend, even though its long-term forecast looks poor. And they're spending, a lot of people know this, but some don't. The way they financed the VISIP was they said, what's the savings we get for the fiscal year from March 7th through the end of the fiscal year? Oh, that's a quarter of that person's salary. That's where that quarter number came from. So that's how they were financing it. In the future, let's say we fast forward 3-6 months, a quarter or two, they likely will just not have that wiggle room. So I'd be skeptical if a similar offer would be made. Is it possible? Sure, it's possible. I think it's extremely unlikely. Did you, any of the board or Adam, did you have opinions on that?
No, nothing to add beyond what you said. I think you captured it well.
Okay, great. Let's pause for just a few moments here to see if there are any questions about VISIP. And next up on the agenda, let's see. Do you want to cover the COVID-19 restrictions and impact, Adam?
Yeah, sure thing. So I think folks will have seen, it was last Friday, I think we were actually on the Tasman site meeting when in the background, everyone's phone buzzed or rang loudly with the push notification the county's back in lockdown mode, or all 9 area counties are back in a stay-at-home order. So just as a reminder, I think folks are mostly clear on this now that we've been through this rodeo a few times now. But as a reminder, as county employees, folks are all exempted from the stay-at-home order as essential workers. That being said, it's absolutely an opportunity to revisit with your department if for some reason there's not been flexibility on work from home, or you're inappropriately, you think, required to come into work more than is necessary to actually do your job. It's absolutely an opportunity to revisit that, given, I think the spiraling cases and the expectation of, worse to come after Christmas, and the decline in the number of available hospital beds, and just all these bad metrics, right? It's absolutely a waypoint to revisit telework if that's for some reason an ongoing issue in your department. I'm not too aware how much of an issue that has been in SSA. I know at other departments, most are fairly progressive, but we have some where there's just unfortunately been still resistance to allowing folks to work at home for whatever reason. And if that's a conversation that you can use SEMA support in, of course, you're welcome to reach out to myself or Zeb for assistance with that. It's something that we've been, quite involved in since back in March. think that's all I'd have to say on that piece.
Great, thank you, Adam. You know, I know, Robin, you sit on the so-called return to work, maybe the title's changed, committee. Is there anything you had to add about that?
That's for social services.
Yes, for social services specifically.
I'm on the steering committee representing SEMA, but it's still an ongoing. We just had a meeting not too long ago, and mostly all we talked about is teleworking. A lot of continued teleworking.
And is there any expansion to the telework program, or how has that been handled internally?
I don't know if there's been so much expansion, but I do know that they're waiting for the county actually to come up with the new telework kind of program, because there is one in place, but because this all happened so fast, so many people didn't read it, didn't sign it, didn't do any of that. So there's a lot of concern over that.
Okay, yeah, and that concern is shared by me. You know, the existing telework policy is somewhat robust in the sense that in order to be on telework officially, I'm not talking about the COVID related telework because there was an emergency exception to that. You know, you have to take a course. Your supervisor has to take a course. You sign a document saying that you agree to the use of county technology. You certify that you have a clean, clear, quiet space where you can do your work and that it's safe, OSHA safe, right? And then
and that you provide your own ergonomics, that the county doesn't provide it for you. That's one of the major sticking things.
That's right, that you provide your own ergonomics and that the county reserves the right to inspect your workspace. I can't remember what the notice is, but it's like at an hour's notice. So they can come into your home and be like, show me your workspace. And there's just not that control right now for telework. So, you know, I understand why people are concerned about that. But I'm happy that people are able to work from home, just because, you know, the current situation is a spiking caseload. So we certainly don't want to spread infection at all in the workplace. If there are no questions about that, let's move right into the county budget news. Do you want to start off on that one, Adam, or do you want me to?
I can start off. You can fill in anything that I miss.
Great.
So as folks will recall, the next waypoint for the budget is going to be February. That's the next opportunity for another supplemental budget by the board. And that's the one that we've, I think, been talking about in the past. That's, you know, the last opportunity this fiscal year. So any remaining issues with the budget need to be resolved at that point. We're now past the November budget where there were some small adjustments made to the budget, some minor cuts. I think at the end of that, what was the final number we had of folks that were impacted by a layoff and had to move ZEB? I think it was going to be 17 within SEMA.
It ended up being just a little bit less than that, because of our intervention in the board. I think it came in at like 14.
Okay. And that was, you know, overall represented some minor adjustments to the county budget, but there still remains about a 225 million structural deficit in the county budget that will need to be resolved in February. I think the good news now is it's been unclear if that was a number that was going to grow substantially before the end of the year. I think based off, you know, listening into what the board's saying in open session and conversations with the county executive, I think there's no concerns now that number is going to grow substantially. And it's also helpful that that's the realm of the numbers that we're talking about when we see that we've realized the, you know, 100 million in savings through VISIP. In addition, the county still has, you know, another, you know, more than 1,500 outstanding vacancies, which could be used to address the structural deficit, you know, in its entirety, though not all of those positions are likely to end up cut, because on that list of 1,500 plus vacancies, there continue to be positions that are definitely essential, you know, nursing positions, other healthcare positions during the pandemic, et cetera. So looking ahead, like we said, the next waypoint is going to be February. There'll be another round of budget hearings at that point in time. and you'll expect to see, SEMA engage in the same sort of advocacy we did, prior to the November budget, working to, maintaining these SEMA positions, as Zeb did very successfully with integrated pest management, for example. And we'll have more updates as the budget situation develops. Anything you'd like to add, Zeb?
Yes, a couple of just sort of macroeconomic items. As you know, there's currently some funding working its way through Congress. It's unclear if that's going to come in the short term before President Biden gets sworn in, I suppose I should say President-elect, or President Trump leaves. There's some concern right now about sort of unrelated COVID provisions in that. We're looking for the funding to the county level, state and county level. I'll leave my opinion about it outside of this discussion, but that's really what we're contemplating is will we get the funding and when? Some kind of relief bill will be forthcoming either under President Trump or under President Biden. It just depends on the timing. But either will likely come before February.
And for folks who have been following it, the news on that has kind of been there was some jockeying at the national level, right, between are we going to give folks, that $600 stimulus check, or are we going to include state and local funding? The price tags were about the same. So what's happened is that the current iteration of that bill has stimulus checks in it, means tested stimulus checks for families. But then the state and local funding was carved out into its own bill. So I'm not in a position to say whether that makes it more or less likely to pass, but that's kind of the play that's been developing in Congress. Folks have been following it.
That's right. And then there's a lot of just sort of unusual provisions as well. But I think that happens with any bill, right? You just sort of get, Joe's Cake Shop in Chicago gets $1 million for some reason, right? And that's kind of just how it works. I'm not saying that's a good thing. It just is unusual. But the other key piece about the county budget is I've heard some members say, and actually I was quite interested in this, hey, it turns out property values are going up. That's true and kind of surprising, right? Our property tax roll is going up by 1%. That's the assessor's estimate, is going to go up by 1% this year. Kind of mysterious to me. I don't know how that's happening with so many people out of work, but it is happening. And so folks have been asking, well, if assessed value is going up 1% and property tax revenue to the county is going up 1%, where's this big budget deficit coming from? Well, I'll explain. First off, the state is not enjoying and feds are not enjoying increasing revenues. So our reimbursements from them are broadly declining. Also, we are seeing that the need for social services, you guys know this, the need for the provision of social services and also emergency medical care related to COVID has increased significantly. Also, we have the bottom falling out of sales tax revenue as well as occupancy tax revenue, which is coming from hotels, restaurants, retailers, and so forth. So yes, you may have a small increase in property tax revenue, but you have other sources of revenue seriously decreasing. Also, one other point, for those of you in finance, you may be aware of this. I don't know if we have anyone here from the assessor's office. The assessor and county budget every year builds in a 3% increase in assessed property tax values. So while it's certainly good that we're not seeing a negative increase, we budgeted and spent as though we were going to get a 3% increase in property tax values, and we got a 1% increase. So it's certainly falling short of what we were anticipating. So that's ultimately where there's kind of all these different levers. It gets complicated quickly as to where that budget deficit is coming from. Any questions on that?
I had a couple questions come in. I think we may have addressed them, but just to hit them again real quick. We had a question on the possibility of the county offering another visit program down the line. So we spoke to that briefly, and it's a low likelihood in our estimation. It's possible, but there's a small likelihood. or if it was going to be a high likelihood, it would be in some future fiscal year. And the second question, just to reiterate, how many SEMA folks took advantage of it? It was 141 overall, and there were about 600 people in the county total who took VISIP, which means that we're a little bit overrepresented because we're, almost a quarter of the folks who were approved, and we're definitely not a quarter of the county. But I mean, I think that takes into account that if you're in SEMA, you're more likely to be, further along in your career, more likely to be close to retirement, in a better financial position to separate from employment or to retire, as well as there were just some areas that weren't offered this, for example, the nurses or I believe the public safety unions were offered it. They're so short staffed. So there were some folks that just weren't offered the opportunity to take VISIP, which means we'll be a little overrepresented for that reason as well.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Also, you'll see, we have a question about VISIP. I'll just read it aloud. Is there a scenario where the VISIP savings will be enough to balance what is being anticipated as the budget shortfall? No. It's a great question. No, unfortunately. What we covered is the anticipated current budget is a little bit more than 300 million. Let's call it 320 million for the purposes of this conversation. The anticipated savings from VISIP, which now is concluded, right? If you want to apply for VISIP today, you can't. What is approximately $100 million, probably a little bit less than that. So you're still looking at a $200+ million shortfall that will have to be bridged through other means other than VISIP.
Theoretically, the combination of every outstanding vacancy plus the ones VISIP added could address the structural deficit. So it's unlikely that's going to be the method through which it's addressed, right? Because some of those positions are essential.
Also,
it was about 600 people took advantage of the VISIP countywide.
Yeah, good question, JP. Also, you'll see that I posted the passcode in chat. I've gotten a few texts and emails. Apparently, people were having trouble signing into this Zoom meeting because they required a passcode. The passcode's embedded in the invite, so if you just click on it, it should bring you in. I'm confused by that. If anyone here had a problem with that.
Everyone here found it. You had to scan a little bit for it, but
yeah. That happened to me too. I had to put the code in.
Oh, okay. Well, that's unusual. When I click, anyway, sorry if that confused anybody. In the future, it's probably, if it's requiring you to put in the passcode, I'll probably have to just change it to waiting room only instead of passcode. So that's a little easier, more burdensome to administer, but a little bit easier for people to get in. Okay. Next item. Classification committee. You're up, Adam.
So I just posted in chat the members of the classification committee that we settled on. That'll be coming out officially today in an e-blast with a reminder, another copy of the application, and a due date for it. So to recap for folks who haven't been paying attention to this, we have new contract language coming into effect in 2021 in March. That gets rid of the old classification study system where anybody could submit whenever and then wait 3 or 4 years to get a response and a study. Instead, we'll have 30 class studies that can go forward. The way those 30 class studies are going to be selected is through this committee, right? So when we put out the call, we had, I don't know, somewhere between like a little more than 30 people were interested in being on the committee for the class study, less than 40, probably more than 30. And myself, Zeb, with input from SEMA's e-board, went through that to settle on a list of 10 people for the classification study committee. And the criteria that we were weighing there was trying to put together a committee that was representative of a wide swath of departments throughout the county, as well as a wide breadth of classifications and types of work that those folks are doing. It'll be the responsibility of this committee to, one, weigh up applications and decide whether it's likely or not that a prospective class study has a reasonable likelihood of success. And success in this case would mean getting something for the incumbents in that classification, right? Whether it's to have them be successfully reclassed as something else, to have an update to their classification that brings along a pay increase, or something similar, right? And then secondarily, their job will be to make sure that the process is managed in a fair and equitable way that maximizes benefit for SEMA members, right? So the 10 folks that are on the classification committee, we have Liam Lai from Valley Health Plan, Lorraine Ortega from HHS clinical side, Gabe Guzman from HHS IT, Jean Conway from DTAC, Jim Piazza, one of our board members, also in HHS IT, Donna Mensimer is in Rhodes, also on the board, Dolores Morales from Probation, your senior president, David Fernandez from HHS, non-clinical, Robin here on the call. Thanks for getting voluntold, Robin. And then Laura McCabe from the sheriff. So that will be our class study committee. They're going to start meeting next year. The due date for applications will be January 31st. That application previously went out in an e-blast, I want to say last month. We'll be sending a copy of it out again today. If you have any specific questions or need assistance with that, you can reach out to myself or Zeb to answer general class study questions. And by the end of February, the committee will then have responses back out to members about who's been selected to go forward through the class study process. Any questions on this? No questions.
Okay, there's a couple of items that I'd like to deviate a little bit from the agenda, and then we'll talk about the vaccine rollout. I'm putting them in chat. SPM, SSPM, the DFCS, I don't know what to call it. I'm going to put in parentheses reorg. It's not really a reorg. And then, of course, the 360 evaluations. So these are specific to SSA. The program manager and SSPM, there are some program managers and SSPMs where the subordinate class is receiving a specific differential and it's creating compaction. That issue is still alive and well, and we'll be discussing it at the next labor management meeting. So I just want to provide a brief update to that for people who may be asking about it. The DFCS reorg, for those that were involved in that, I see we have a few DFCS folks on this call, quite a few DFCS folks on this call. We gave up an SSPM 3 in that reorg and got two SSPM 2s, but in exchange, also management deleted an SSPM 3 and added a deputy director position. Now we have lost through the cuts an SSPM 3, and the deputy director position is vacant. So we're trying to swap that back and eliminate the newly added and vacant deputy director position to get an SSPM 3. So that's under discussions now as well. I have seen that. Yes, thank you, Griselda, for that. I also have, also the 360-degree evaluations for those of you that participated in that. We only had one meeting, and then we brought up some pretty legitimate points and the county backed off. We haven't seen them reintroduce that. If that's something that other folks are interested in, I'm happy to just include people. We already have a standing committee on that. But for anyone that wanted to know, the county proposed just for SSA to have a 360-degree evaluation that would be supplemental to our normal evaluation that is supposed to happen annually. Our contract language is very clear on this. In fact, that language was enhanced that this cycle that we can talk about having an additional evaluation, but it wouldn't be, both parties have to agree that they can't unilaterally do it. At this point, we haven't agreed. We brought up some legitimate concerns and questions about it, and the county said, oh, those are legitimate. Let us go back and look at that. And with their priorities being everywhere else, they haven't come back on that. So if anyone was concerned about a 360 evaluation, it's not going to be sprung on you. I think for broadly, our members are skeptical about the 360-degree evaluation, but that's the update on that is kind of there's a no update. We met once, asked questions, and they're trying to readjust their proposal. Anything that folks on that committee wanted to add? Oh, Patricia's adding right now. SSA execs can do the 3. Yes. I don't know if that was a statement or question.
哦，那么多，这个就
Yeah, I just muted everybody. You can unmute yourself if you want, so no one's restricted from unmuting. SSA execs can do it for themselves, and they can do it to each other, but they should not be doing it to you, right? Even if you're one removed from an SSA exec, they shouldn't be doing a 360 evaluation to you. So no, that if that was a question or comment, it's an accurate comment and a good question. Any other comments or questions about any of those items raised? If not, Adam can talk about the COVID-19.
I had a private question come in asking, what do folks do if their classification study request is not accepted? So any that aren't accepted are put on deferred status, which means that they'll be gotten to once the rest have been completed. From right now, we just don't know whether any or a majority of those placed on deferred status are likely to be completed, right? This is our first time going through the new process. We'll have a better sense next year of how long it takes them to complete the 30 and how many on the deferred list get addressed. For any that don't, you can absolutely put in a subsequent request the following year. And part of the direction that we've given to the class study committee and the training that we did is one of the things that should be weighed in selecting is whether someone had a good case for study a previous year and wasn't selected, right? That's something to put on the yes side of the scale for deciding whether they go forward or not. So two ways. One, it'll be deferred. The other possible avenue, and this is going to rely on significant support in your department, but executives can sponsor their own class studies. So that can sometimes be an option, but that depends upon what kind of leverage you have and whether it's something that would be supported by your executive or not.
And I would go one step more skeptical even than that. I would say that the contract obligates the county to study 30 classifications. If yours is not selected, it's theoretically possible they would do it, but there's no obligation for them to. So I would count on you not being studied this year. If you're not selected as one of the 30, I would say, okay, well, I'm probably not going to be studied. Let me go see if my exec, and we can help you with that limitedly. Let me go see if my exec wants to sponsor this, or I'll put it in for next year. And we also will, as part of our criteria, and this is a broader discussion with the committee, but I would strongly recommend that if we have, pretend this is the case, we have 60 classifications put in, and 20 of them, we take a look at it and we're like, yeah, it's not that compelling, but we have 40 that are compelling, but we have to pick 30. Okay, we pick the best 30, or the 30 that cover the most people, but then we put 10 that were compelling on the back burner and really look at those strongly next year. I don't know that that's going to be the case, because as Adam points out, this is the first time we're going through it where we have a specific number and a specific turnaround time. Maybe we only get 20 applications and then we do all of them. I doubt it, but maybe we do.
One other thing I would say is that at least for this first year, HR is going to need to be completing these 30 with the guaranteed turnaround time, in addition to closing out other pending classification studies, of which there are still a decent number. So on the one hand, that'll be an argument in subsequent years to say, look at all this extra bandwidth you clearly have. You were able to close out 30 pending ones and the 30 that we gave you in March, right, in a given year. So, maybe you can get another 10 deferred ones next year. It's a bridge we'll cross when we get to it. But at least for this first year, HR, ESA are definitely going to have their hands full when we give them 30 new class studies, and they're still closing out the pending ones.
Absolutely. And again, I am no ally or fan of ESA, so don't think that I'm making excuses for them. It is, I just want to point out to everybody, it is a significant amount of work to process layoffs, right? And when I use the term layoff, I don't mean that people are going out the door. I mean that people are getting displaced and moving to other vacancies, right? Generating the seniority lists, finding out who meets what minimum qualifications, drawing up those lists, and then who gets displaced in the new department and who's probation, et cetera. That's all very, very time consuming. So again, not an excuse, but just keep your antennas up and realize that that's something that's going on in the background. Also, this is as good an opportunity as any. I think many of you know that a longtime worker and partner of ours in ESA very sadly and unexpectedly passed away, Sheree Moresco. So that certainly had an impact on anyone who worked with her, and certainly also on probably the efficiency of HR in the short term. So certainly our best wishes go out to her family and anyone who knew her, as well as work colleagues, and just be aware that that is something that is impact. You know, when you lose that kind of expertise and knowledge, that's going to have an impact on any department.
Well said, Zeb. And the last item we have on the agenda is just to give folks a little bit of an update on how the vaccine rollout is going for our healthcare workers in the county, a lot of whom are in SEMA. So I believe vaccination, it's probably been 2 weeks now since the vaccine rollout started. The health system did some good work in advance of that, polling employees and also SEMA members internally as to what the compliance rate would be with vaccination. And it's not 100%. It is going to be a voluntary rollout. And the county is maintaining that position even with, there was some updated direction that came out from the EEOC last Wednesday or Thursday, stating that the vaccine can be made mandatory and it has a legal means test in it. It's something along the lines of, for anyone for whom not vaccinating it would place the public in substantial danger, something like that. So I think that would clearly, include healthcare workers, anyone else, maybe an argument there. That being said, the county's decided they're going to keep it on a voluntary basis and not make it mandatory. I think the reason for that is somewhat that internal polling shows that there's some 20% of so staff in the health system who aren't interested in getting the vaccine for one reason or another. And it might just be that folks are concerned about, quickened process of getting FDA approval, or people who realistically shouldn't be getting it, whether you're pregnant or in some category that the vaccine wasn't tested on, right? There are several groups that applies to. Anyway, the vaccine rollout is going quicker than was anticipated. There was an extra shipment of vaccine they weren't expecting that came in on Monday, which is great. And the rollout is going in 3 waves. The first tier, I think, is mostly completed now. I think they called it Wave A, and that was folks who were really on the front line, whether you're working in the ICU or NICU or doing hands-on patient care, really. Group B then has started, and it had quite a few SEMA folks in it. That's kind of the second layer back. I regularly work with people who work with members of the public, or I work with, people in a healthcare setting who you wouldn't expect to have COVID necessarily, whether that's, somebody in custody health, for example. And then Group C will be kind of the tertiary layer beyond that. We're expecting now, I believe this week, Moderna vaccines arrive as well. So things should be completed shortly into the new year, which will be great relief for a lot of people. And is in some ways, I guess, a bit of a perk, being in a, government sector healthcare position. But these are just folks who have put in an absolutely tremendous amount of blood, sweat, and tears since March, caring for everybody. So it's great they're getting access to the vaccine now. So there's folks from other departments on this is a question from Mary Beth asking, would SSA frontline workers fall in a tier? If any, you would fall in tier 3. You're not specifically called out in any of the rollout plans that I've seen. each department has folks that have been working with, there's a broader committee on this to discuss vaccine rollout. I don't know who from SSA is on that. They'd be able to speak more to where folks are falling in there. But you know, other departments like behavioral health, you know, for example, are falling in tier 3, and it would be not people, right, who are, you know, working from home. This would be people who are regularly interacting with members of the public, right? That's who's being prioritized for this. So where folks in SSA fall into that, I would imagine wave 3. But you'll have someone from SSA high up who's part of this committee. I'm just not sure who it is from SSA. I mean, Mary Beth or Robin, you might have some idea, or Patricia or someone else.
I don't.
No, I have no clue, unless it's Daniel himself. I haven't heard that it's anyone else
Yeah,
from
and
DFCS.
Patricia raises an excellent point. The people that are in the hotels, I think, are definitely at a high exposure rate. So they should be prioritized by the department.
Yes, and my understanding is those folks fell in wave 2, so I believe they're up now. And there's a little bit of an onus on the individual to put in for it. You're not reached out to and told, hey, this is your date. There's a process by which you go in and you set a date for yourself to come in, because again, it's voluntary. My understanding is those folks are in wave 2, Patricia, so they should be available to get vaccinated now.
So, hi Zeb, hi Adam, this is Patricia. So thank you for answering that question, because I did see an email to the agency directors asking if there is anyone within the department or within the agency who is out in the community, who is frontline workers, and I believe directors were asked to submit names to be in the prioritization queue. So I did see that email coming through. Now for DSW, in my bureau, I have about 10 staff who are now assigned as DSW and motel sites. I find it very disturbing that the county is putting them at front line, okay? And yet they're not mandating recurring COVID testing, number one, nor are they making it available, readily available to them at the site. I heard that there are departments that public health does deploy staff to the sites and offer on-site testing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe that is being done for the DSW staff at the homeless motels, and it really should be. And then as far as being in tier 2 for the vaccination, that's really great. I think that is the least we can do. However, I don't know if that communication has gone out, because I have not heard from my staff who are currently assigned at those DSW assignments. Mm-hmm. So yeah, how would that communication be rolled out, and and what is the timeline, and who is in charge of that? Is it me because I have DSW, or is it EOC?
I would say it would be Alicia Anderson in this case, who's in charge of those folks. Happy to reach out to her when we're done and see where this is at. See if I can give you an update, Patricia. And then just the other thing I would say is my understanding is that whole group is getting wound down within the next couple of months as the county hands off that entirety of work to, I believe it's going to be contractors or contracted agencies to do that hotel motel management work.
That is not what I'm hearing, Adam. So I mean, that would be great news. But that is not what I'm hearing. And actually, I just lost 2 more staff within the last week that was deployed to the motels.
Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing folks returned elsewhere with the message that this is getting wound down soon. So that's that's not what I've heard. But yeah, I'm happy to follow up with the woman in charge of this afterwards for you.
Yeah, and like I said, I would love to have them to come home. Because they've been gone for 9 months now, And actually, it is now impacting our time study and our next fiscal year allocation.
Yeah. So how's this? Adam, if work with Patricia about, and anyone for that matter, Adam, as representing the hospital, is more knowledgeable and more involved in the allocation of COVID vaccine doses than I am. But I certainly do need to be more involved with that and want to be involved in operationally as we withdraw from the provision of shelter services from SSA, how that gets done. So Adam, if you can handle the COVID vaccination issues with SSA people, and then I'll handle the labor relations and the sort of operational piece as well.
Sure.
Were there others that had concerns about their staff? Oh,
I know the staff that's doing contact tracing out at Silver Creek, they get tested every 2 weeks. But a couple of people have tested positive out there, so they have a lot more people teleworking now instead of working at that site.
Okay. Oh, and that's good. Thank you for sharing that, Valerie. She's sharing that social work staff that are making in-person visits to clients have the vaccine. I'm imagining 2 people that are in the public guardian's office that are doing those home visits are also in that category as well. Oh, I apologize. I didn't announce it. I added a little link in chat. This is a holiday well wishes video from your SEMA e-board. So that is up and posted, and we're going to try to send that in an e-blast today as well. So you guys are the first to see it. I actually haven't even watched the video yet. So I'm relying on the e-board to have pre-screened this. it's work appropriate, but okay. Anything else, Adam? I think we covered the agenda.
Nope, I think we did everything.
Okay, well, I guess Robin and Mary Beth, I'll give you guys an opportunity to say goodbye or happy holidays or whatever to everybody if you like.
Happy holidays, everybody. Please stay safe. And whatever you do, please wear your SEMA mask.
I like that.
Ditto from Mary Beth. I agree. Everybody stay real safe. And if you have to wear a mask, it should be your SEMA mask. If you need a SEMA mask, contact Robin or I.
Terrific. Anything you want to say, Adam?
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas if you celebrate it. And I hope everyone has a happy new year.
Yep, same for me. Hag Samea. Everyone enjoy. Thanks for being so wonderful. And I'm going to stop I'll leave this open for a couple minutes in case people have questions, but I'm going to stop the recording now. Okay. Thank you.